You were probably taught, maybe by a teacher, maybe by a slightly too enthusiastic camp counselor, maybe by a did you know post you saw at 1 a.m., that this cheerful little children's game is secretly one of the darkest artifacts in the English language. A coded memorial to the Black Death. Millions of dead, hidden inside a nursery rhyme, hiding in plain sight for 600 years. It's one of the best urban legends ever created. It's also, almost certainly, completely made up. Today we're taking it apart, layer by layer. Let's start by giving the myth its due. Let's hear the whole theory, the way it's usually told, because it really is a well-built piece of storytelling. Ring Around the Rosie. The claim is that this describes the plague's most infamous symptom, a ring-shaped rosy rash that formed around swollen lymph nodes, the bub nose that gave the bubonic plague its name. A pocket full of posies. The claim is that, with no understanding of germ theory, people believe disease spread through bad air, miasma, if that's how you say it, so they stuffed their pockets with flowers and herbs, hoping the fragrance would protect them, or at least mask the smell of the sick and dying. Ashes, or in some version, a tissue. The claim here is that either the sound of sneezing, a symptom of the more contagious pneumonic form of plague, or it's literal ashes, the residue of burning bodies or infected homes to stop the spread. And then lastly, we all fall down. The claim with that, this needs no interpretation. Everybody drops, everybody dies. 4 lines, a complete, tidy narrative of plague, disease, death, and mourning. Small enough for young children to sing, dark enough for adults to whisper about it at parties. It's genuinely a great piece of folklore. There's just one problem. Almost none of it is true. Here's the first crack in the story, and it's a big one. Nobody who actually lived through the plague ever connected it to this rhyme. Not during the Black Death of the 1340s, not during the Great Plague of London in 1665. No diary entry, no pamphlet, no sermon, no folk collector wandering the countryside jotting down rhymes. For centuries, literally centuries, this supposed coded memorial left absolutely no trace of anyone knowing it was about the plague. So when did the plague explanation actually show up? 1961. That's it. That's the whole timeline. The theory makes its very first known appearance in a book called The Plague and Fire, written by James Leeser, nearly 300 years after the Great Plague, and nearly 600 years after the Black Death. Leeser wrote it almost as an aside, describing children playing the game. Roses referred to the rosy rash of plague, ring to signify the tokens, the posies were herbs and spices carried to sweeten the air, and sneezing was a common symptom of those close to death. The single passage in a single book is where the entire modern plague myth was born. Even the folklorists who'd spent their careers cataloging this exact rhyme were baffled by how fast it caught on. Iona and Peter Opie, the 2 most respected nursery rhyme historians of the 20th century, later joked that they'd heard the plague theory repeated to them so often that they were reluctant to go out of the house. Think about what you'd have to believe for this plague theory to be true, that this rhyme survived by word of mouth alone, passed from child to child for somewhat between 300 and 600 years, without a single person writing it down, until one author in 1961 finally decoded it. That's not impossible, but it should make you suspicious. And here's where it falls apart, because if you actually go looking for the original version of the rhyme, you find there isn't one. There are dozens. In Britain, it's not even called Ring Around the Rosie. It's Ring a Ring o' Roses, and the lyrics people insist are locked in place, encoding specific plague symptoms, turn out to be anything but consistent. The American Ashes, in the earliest known British print version from 1881, it's hush, 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 hush. In other British versions, it's a tissue, a mimic sneeze. In an 1883 Shropshire collection, the children don't say anything at all. They just act out sneezing. In parts of the American South, it becomes husha, husha. Some versions swap the line entirely for redbird, bluebird, or green grass, yellow grass. And it goes back further than any of these. The earliest known relative of this song was printed in Germany in 1796, nearly a century before the first English print version. Translated, it goes, ringed row, we are 3 children, sitting under an elder bush, and all of us going hush, hush, hush. No roses, no posies, no ashes, no falling down dead, just children sitting down together. Here's the logical problem this creates if this rhyme really encoded specific historical facts about the plague. A rash, herbs, sneezing, and death. you'd expect those core details to survive intact across versions and centuries. Instead, the key evidence people cite, the ashes specifically, is one of the least consistent lines in the entire rhyme's history. It shows up in some places and is completely absent in others. That's not what a coded historical record looks like. That's what oral folklore looks like. A song that mutates constantly as it's passed along, exactly like children's rhymes always do. So if it's not about the plague, what actually is the story here? The honest answer is, nobody knows for certain. But the leading theory among folklorists traces the rhyme's roots to Germany in the late 18th century, with closely related versions also appearing in Switzerland and Italy. From there, it likely crossed the Atlantic and the Channel with German immigrants and spread into English and American-speaking communities, slowly reshaping itself along the way folk songs usually do. And there's a theory here that's genuinely more interesting than the plague version. In 19th century America and England, many Protestant communities enforced strict religious bans on dancing. Actual dancing, couples touching, moving to music, was considered sinful at the time. But teenagers being teenagers, they found the loophole. They called it the play party. Groups of young people would gather in a circle, singing simple rhyming songs while they moved. No instruments, no formal steps, technically not dancing at all really. Folklorist Philip Hiscock has argued that Around the Rosie is part of this exact tradition. A song about courtship, flirtation, and crushes, and disguised as an innocent children's circle game. Read that way, the whole rhyme flips. It's not about death at all. It might be about romance. Kids finding a socially acceptable way to hold hands, form circles, and fall dramatically into each other's arms, all while adults assumed it was just a cute little game. A ban on dancing, and a rhyme built to sneak around it. That's a far better story than the plague theory. It's just less famous. There's one more theory worth putting on the table, because it's the oldest one of all, older than the plague theory by decades. The circular structure of the game itself, a ring of people dancing or moving around a center, closely resembles ancient pagan ritual dances performed around sacred trees or bonfires. Long before anyone thought plague, folklorists were looking at this rhyme through a much older lens. In 1898, a dictionary of British folklore proposed a pagan connection, drawing a comparison to Jacob Grimm's Deutsche Mythology, the foundational text of Germanic mythology. The entry cites an old passage. Gifted children of fortune have the power to laugh roses, as Freya wept gold, suggesting a possible link to Norse mythological figures associated with beauty, fertility, and light. Is that the real answer? Honestly, maybe not. It's speculative, but it was proposed the same way that the plague theory eventually was, interpretation layered onto an old rhyme long after the fact. But it's a useful reminder that the plague theory isn't even the first mysterious backstory people have projected onto this song. It's just the one that stuck. So here's the actual question worth asking. Not, is the plague theory true? We've covered that pretty thoroughly. The real question is, why did it spread so fast? And why won't it die? Folklorists have a term for exactly this phenomenon. Metafolklore. Folklore about folklore, basically. Here's what that means. The rhyme itself is folklore. An old children's song, passed down, endlessly remixed. But the story about the rhyme, the plague theory, is now its own separate piece of folklore. It has its own life, its own spread pattern, its own believers, and nobody fact-checked it in 1961. It didn't need any of the footnotes, it just sounded true enough, and it got passed from teacher to student, from parent to child, from internet post to internet post, gathering confidence at every step, with absolutely nobody along the way going back to the primary sources. And that's the real twist, if you want one. This story is about a secret, coded message hidden in a children's rhyme. A message that spread for centuries by word of mouth before anyone really figured it out. Turned out to be exactly that itself. A story that spread by word of mouth, repeated with total confidence until it became accepted as historical fact. The myth about hidden meaning became the hidden meaning. We wanted this rhyme to be about something. Ambiguity bothers us. A silly little circle game with no real meaning feels almost unsatisfying. So for the last 60 odd years, we've quietly agreed to believe it's about the worst thing we could imagine instead. So next time you hear it, you'll know. It's not about the plague, it's about us. Thanks for tuning into the Auditorium. If you enjoyed this video, please sure to like and subscribe as it helps the channel a lot. If there's any topics you would like discussed, please feel free to leave it in the comments below.